by the dawn's early light, what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Forward, carry, forward.
Order, up.
Order, order, order. Ready, shoot. Oh, color.
Detail, parade, put.
Please be seated. My name is Gary Delantis. I'm president of the San Francisco Police Officers Association, and we thank you all, police officers, firefighters, dignitaries, elected officials, for joining us here today on this very solemn occasion and this very solemn weekend of remembrance of one of the worst and tragic events in the history of our country. So we wanted to make this quick, we wanted to make it respectful, and we wanted to make it a very solemn occasion, which I think is the way that it should be treated. So the first thing that we're going to do here today, I know I asked everybody to sit. I'm going to ask you to stand up again to observe a moment of silence for all of those that lost their lives on 9/11. Thank you. Years ago, in the San Francisco Fire Department, when a firefighter was killed in the line of duty, bells were rung 9 times at each firehouse throughout the city. This was known as the chaplain's call. In honor of this tradition, firefighter Gregory Giannotti will now ring the bell 9 times for the firefighters and police officers who gave their lives on 9/11. Thanks, Greg. Now for the invocation, I would like to introduce Father John Green, chaplain of the San Francisco Firefighters, and Father Michael Healy, chaplain for the San Francisco Police Department, for the invocation.
We live among heroes, the heroes of the past, those firefighters, police officers, and paramedics, and civilians who gave their lives on 9/11. We live among heroes today as we remember Tony and Vinny, firefighters who gave their lives for our city this past June. We remember all of us who serve this city daily, giving our lives in service to our fellow citizens and giving of ourselves in many different ways. We live among heroes. Today we don't assemble so much with a sense of grief for those who have given their lives as much as with a sense of pride that they did their jobs well and they gave their all. As we gather together in this city, we ask Almighty God to remember us and bless those who have been heroic in the past, those who are heroic today, and in a real sense to give us the strength, the honor, the dignity, the pride, and the courage to be San Francisco police officers and San Francisco firefighters. It's a great pleasure now for me to introduce my friend and fellow priest, Father Michael Healy, who will lead you in prayer.
I would like to share with you this morning the beautiful prayer that was composed for the Holy Father, the Pope Benedict, when he visited the site in New York on 9/11. And so in this prayer, we're asked also to look at ourselves and the way in which we treat this tragic situation. I was very much impressed with one of the firefighters who said about her colleagues that she had a hole in her heart, but it was important for her to fill that hole in her heart with all the great memories, the wonderful people who served with her, and also the sacrifice that they made. Our Holy Father, in going to 9/11, came with this prayer, and I think we can all join in it. We have to use our imagination a little bit because I'm going to mention the places where the tragedy took place. God of peace, bring your peace to our violent world, peace in the hearts of all men and women, and peace among all nations on earth. O God of love, compassion and healing, look on us, people of many different faiths and traditions, who gather here today at this site, the scene of incredible violence and pain. We ask you in your goodness to give eternal light and peace to all who have died. The heroic first responders, our firefighters, police officers, emergency service workers, and Port Authority personnel, along with all the innocent men and women who were victims of this tragedy simply because their work of service brought them here on September 11th. We ask you, in your compassion, to bring healing to those who, because of their presence here today, suffered from injuries and illness. Heal too the pain of those still grieving families and all who lost loved ones in this tragedy. Give them strength to continue their lives with courage and hope. We are mindful as well of those who suffered death, injury, and loss. On the same day, in the Pentagon and in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, our hearts are one with theirs as our prayers embrace their pain and suffering. God of peace, bring your peace to our violent world, peace in the hearts of all men and women, and peace among the nations of this earth. Turn to your way of love those whose hearts and minds are consumed with hatred. God of understanding, overwhelmed by the magnitude of this tragedy, we seek your light and guidance as we confront such terrible events. Grant that those whose lives were spared may live so that the lives lost here may not have been lost in vain. Comfort and console us, strengthen our hope, and give us the wisdom and courage to work tirelessly for a world where true peace and love reign among nations and in the hearts of all. And we ask this, Amen.
Thank you, Father. We're very honored today to have some dignitaries with us that I'd like to acknowledge. First of all, Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi has joined us. Obviously, she is needed back in D.C. for the 9/11 celebration, but she wanted to take time today, caught a later flight to be with us today to share in this day of remembrance with her city. Mayor Edwin Lee, your host, and the mayor of this great city, is here with us today. And I think we would be remiss in not giving a special acknowledgement to ex-Mayor Willie Brown, who led us through that very difficult day and that very difficult time in 2001, and his strong and steady leadership, much as Rudy Giuliani in New York and in most major cities in America. The strong leadership of the mayors of those cities got us through a very difficult time. So we thank you very much for that, Mr. Brown. We also have today with us District Attorney George Gascon, who is with us, and we appreciate him being here today. 8-year supervisor, emeritus, so to speak, Sean Ellsburn is with us today. We thank you, Sean, for being here. Treasurer Jose Cisneros, the treasurer of the City and County of San Francisco, is here today. We also have my predecessor at the POA, which was Chris Cunney, who I see out there. And we have, that's the U.S. Attorney is here, I believe. Melinda Haig, thank you very much for being here. I didn't recognize you, and we really appreciate you being here today and sharing this very special day with us. So also joining us on the podium today, the Chief of Police, Greg Reser, of the San Francisco Police Department. Fire Chief Joanne Hayes White is here as well. And I got a call yesterday from Governor Jerry Brown, who could not be here, wanted to be here. As most of you know, this is the city that that Mr. Brown came from. He wanted to be here, but duties in Sacramento on the 9/11 weekend have kept him busy. So our first speaker today, I'm very honored and very proud to introduce the mayor of San Francisco, Edwin Lee.
Good morning. It is my personal honor to join all of you here, not only on stage, but each and every one of you here today to commemorate 9/11, from our police and fire and paramedics to our volunteers to the great citizens of San Francisco. A decade after the terrorist attacks that occurred on September 11th, we continue to struggle to make sense of the terrible events of that day. While San Francisco is more than 3,000 miles away from the attacks on the Twin Towers and the Pentagon, we felt the devastation and loss keenly here in the city, and we will continue to remember and honor those who perished. It's important to me and to the people of San Francisco that we remember and honor the fallen, including hometown heroes like Betty Ong and Mark Bingham. Betty's telephone call from American Airlines Flight 11 was the first indication that America was under attack, and she relayed vital information to the ground crew. Mark wrestled with control of a United Airlines Flight 93 rather than allow hijackers to fulfill their mission. 10 years ago, we also learned about the final moments of San Francisco resident Melissa Hughes, who was a victim of terrorism in the Twin Towers. To read about her final phone calls to her loved ones is just as heartbreaking today as it was 10 years ago. The events of September 11, 2001 changed the world and redefined our nation, not only in the scope of the tragedy, but also in the demonstration of compassion and generosity that occurred in the hours, weeks, and months that followed. In San Francisco and around the country, individuals stepped up to give blood, collect donations, and volunteer their time as a show of support for our nation. To all the families across the nation who suffered and still suffer today, we offer our profound sympathies. I also want to acknowledge the Environmental Protection Agency Regional Administrator Jared Blumenfeld, formerly our director of our Department of the Environment, for the federal agency's important role following 9/11. The EPA conducted much of the hazardous materials assessment and cleanup that occurred on the site of the World Trade Center. This was a massive undertaking, and I thank them for their role in the 9/11 post-event cleanup. While we remember these and other victims and first responders, we should take time to reflect on what 9/11 means for all of us, and to take to heart President Barack Obama's call to us to come together in the spirit of service and unity. There are many events in San Francisco on September 11th that help us do that while we honor the victims and celebrate the service and heroism of our first responders and our military personnel. One such way is to commemorate the day with the peaceful and unifying nature of music. The San Francisco Opera and the Interfaith Council will host Opera in the Park, a special free concert in Golden Gate Park. Hands on Bay Area will host a day of service where we will participate in volunteer projects throughout our city. Another way we can remember and honor the tragic events of 10 years ago is to make sure that our city, as families and as individuals, we are prepared for emergencies, whether man-made or natural disaster. September marks National Preparedness Month, and the city's award-winning website, 72hours.org, stands ready to assist you whether you are making a family emergency plan, building a disaster kit, or need voluntary training. Since September 11, 2001, San Francisco has greatly improved its ability to prepare for, respond to, from emergencies. And just this month, I announced the creation of a joint powers authority to govern a Bay Area-wide public safety communication system after the Bay Area was awarded a $50 million grant to build a broadband communications network for public safety agencies. We know that emergencies don't stop at our city borders, and we must be prepared to seamlessly communicate with other public safety personnel throughout the Bay Area. We have also strengthened our infrastructure, trained our personnel, and are preparing the community so that we can rapidly recover from any emergency. It is now 10 years later, and we are prepared, stronger, and ready. The 9/11 attacks represent an unimaginable tragedy in our history of our country, but at the same time, the lessons learned from that day continue to help us grow and become stronger. I want to personally thank our men and women, the first responders who protect us from grave danger and keep our country safe. These first responders risk their lives for us daily. From the police officers who protect us and the firefighters who courageously keep us from harm and paramedics who care for us, our words cannot describe our thankfulness for your heroism every day and the sacrifices that you've undertaken to keep our communities, our city, and our country safe. With that, I thank you and honor you on this day. And with this commemoration, I also want to present, and if I may ask, the chief of our police, chief of our firefighters, the union leaders to please come up and present this proclamation to you. Chief White, Chief Sir, Union Leaders O'Connor and Delanus, on behalf of our city, may I declare this 9/11 to be the day of service and remembrance in San Francisco and present this proclamation in that honor. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor? Thank you. Should we take a picture?
Pictures all over the place. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll let the press, they're all taking pictures up there, that's fine. Next, we are very honored to present House Democratic Leader, Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi.
Thank you very much, Inspector Delanus, and to President of the San Francisco Police Officers Association, as if you all did not know that, and Lieutenant Tom O'Connor, President of the Firefighters, number 798, for bringing us together today. It is an honor to join you to mark this ceremony with the esteemed collection of our leaders, our former mayor, members of the official family of our community, and to join Mayor Lee, Chief Hayes White, Chief Sir, and to thank all. I joined the mayor in acknowledging and thanking all of our first responders and their families for helping us honor our first responsibility to the people, which is to keep them safe. When we visit the memory of September 11th, we tread on sacred ground. On that day, 10 years ago, Californians awakened to a changed world, as the mayor said, to scenes of an horrific attack on our nation. We each have our stories to tell of where we were and how we found out about it, yet across the country, despite our individual stories, we were all united, bound by grief and sorrow, driven by a resolve, inspired by our fellow Americans to be together, to be strong. Because as we watch the images of destruction in New York, Washington, and Pennsylvania, we all bore witness to courage, to the bravery and heroism of our first responders, the men and women who ran to the rescue of those in danger, who searched for survivors, who risked their lives and their health to save others. Long after the buildings fell, these heroes stayed to sift through the rubble with strong and silent reverence. Sacred ground indeed. And in the aftermath of 9/11, immediately San Franciscans took pride in knowing that our firefighters were on the first plane out to New York to contribute to the rescue and recovery, to share in the grief, and to lend a helping hand. Every day is a day that we are indebted to our first responders, to our men and women in uniform who keep us safe. Just weeks ago, we all came together to honor Vinnie and Tony. And at that time, we said, although today we honor them especially, every day we know that we are in your debt because every day you take risks for us. It is for all of those who responded to 9/11 from here and from around the country and from those in New York that Congress passed and the President signed the James Segrota 9/11 Health and Compensation Act to secure the health and well-being who cleaned up at Ground Zero after 9/11. And it is by the light of their example that Americans join in a National Day of Service and Remembrance to mark this anniversary. And I commend our first responders here for making this second Saturday in September a day of service. It happens to coincide this year with the eve of 9/11. Earlier this year, members of Congress and people really from across the country, but it made a stop in Congress, we had the privilege of helping to stitch a flag that flew over Ground Zero on that fateful day. Some people just decided they were going to have the flag tour the country, and every place it went, it was being mended with portions of other flags, with fragments of our history, including, and this was for those of us who had the privilege of stitching the flag, including threads, small piece, blue threads from the flag that covered the body of Abraham Lincoln after he was assassinated. Another great tragedy that befell our nation. But just think of it, being unified, being united across the generations, across the country, across communities by this flag. When I saw the blue threads from President Lincoln's memorial flag, I was reminded of a speech he made early on where he talked about the silent artillery of time. For the families, friends, and loved ones of those who died on 9/11, may time, that silent artillery of time, help to diminish their pain and grief. But time will never diminish the respect we have for the memory of those who perished and those who came to their rescue. 10 years ago, we lost many people. Today and in the future, we will never forget them, that's for sure. The tragedy of September 11th will always be emblazoned in the hearts, minds, and indeed on the character of America. And so I join our chaplains in invoking God's blessing on the memory of those we lost. May God bless our first responders, all of you, and those you serve, and your families. And may God continue to bless the United States of America. When I leave here, I will go to the airport and go to New York to be part of our congressional delegation to join the President in the observance at Ground Zero. I will take with me the profound statements and sentiments that I see here today and see here every day in response to 9/11. I thank you for that connection to our great country, for that concern for the American people. Again, may God bless you. May God bless America. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. I would now like to introduce our next speaker, Chief of the Firefighters, Chief Joanne Hayes White.
Good morning. Thank you for all being here. I'd especially like to acknowledge President Gary Delanis of the Police Officers Association and President Tom O'Connor of Local 798, recently promoted no longer a lieutenant, but a captain, Captain Tom O'Connor. Thank you for organizing this event today. I'd also like to acknowledge Mayor Lee and Congresswoman Pelosi for your unwavering support of our members, our first responders, and for always prioritizing public safety. As we reflect on the tragedy of September 11, 2001, we will never forget that nearly 3,000 innocent victims lost their lives, and the nation's soul was changed forever. We vividly remember the horrific sights of the World Trade Center in New York, at the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia, and at the crash site in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Hundreds of those who perished were people sworn to serve and to protect. 343 firefighters from the FDNY, 60 law enforcement officers, 37 from the Port Authority PD, and 23 from New York PD. We each remember that day. We remember the tragedy we faced as a nation under attack, but we also remember how we came together as San Franciscans, neighbors, and partners. The city came together as a family to ensure that all of us were safe and that our loved ones were free from harm. One of the most important ways to honor the memory of those innocent victims is to continue to strengthen our collective efforts to maintain vigilance and enhance our preparedness, response, and recovery efforts. It is a shared responsibility. We all play an integral role in being resilient neighborhoods, communities, cities, and states, which all lays the foundation for a strong nation. We can accomplish so much more when we work together. Over the past decade, incredible progress has been made in integrating collaboration into our culture. As I look around, I see the yellow helmets of the NERT program, all part of the process. The Red Cross is here today, and I thank you for being here and being part of the solution and the effort. As we